it's been such a whirlwind of the last four, well, really, the last 10 years have felt like a nonstop, Hollywood drama. But especially the last 4 years have been so much radical, massive change that it's so hard for me to even like try and quantify or predict where I'm going to land, even 5 years from now. I was asked that at a job interview and I was like, I don't know. I just want to be helping people in some way, but I don't know what that means. I don't know what that looks like. Um, Certainly vocationally, I have no idea because I'm for the first time in my life unemployed and, trying to figure out not what's the next just, dead end job for me to jump into that's going to give me the same problems that I've dealt with, at the other dead end jobs I've had. I need to find something where I'm seen for my value and I'm able to contribute the better parts of myself for a higher good, because I don't really feel I feel zero fulfillment in like helping inflate, a CEO's bottom line or, padding the numbers on the spreadsheet for, however many units we moved from the holiday sale. Like none of that does anything for me on a deep level. Like I want to know if we actually improved anybody's life or, we're a part of something positive. Otherwise, I'm like, I don't care about any of that stuff. So I keep shoving myself in all these retail environments where, it becomes increasingly more about, it's weird. It's like every job I take, it ends up being these companies that are always like, oh, they're a great place to work for. And then I somehow am there for the transition of like, when they finally turn that corner of like family friendly to like corporate, executives or, consultants came in and told them we got, shareholders to please and then to just lose all the soul and value out of it. So yeah, I really have a hard time. Like it pisses everyone off where I work because like if there's no heart and soul behind it, I just see through it quick and I get really, really down about it. And I kind of let everyone else know, like, you shouldn't be tolerating this shit either. Like, I'm always kind of like stirring dissent, in the workplace when I know it's like a toxic thing. And so I don't know, maybe I should be like a union boss or something.
Well, it sounds like you're providing a very valuable role of helping people see what's going on, like what the dynamics are happening behind the scenes a little bit, bringing that to people's awareness. That sounds really helpful.
Yeah, it has, I guess like anything, it's got its upside and downside. Then I take it to an extreme and it's like that dude won't shut the F up about, all the injustices happening. Like we get it, man, we get it, but we got bills to pay. And like, I don't need to hear about all the, like there is a line there.
Sure.
And I definitely have failed to, appropriately toe it. But I also, man, like people don't realize this about me because I'm come across so like passionately and intensely, but I take correction or like a rebuke from someone or whatever you want to call it really well. Like if someone calls me out and it's like, dude, what are you talking? You're full of shit. Like you got to like cut this out. You don't know what you're talking about. I might, of course in the moment you might get a little reactionary, but I'm so quickly like, okay, yeah, I see it your way. I can see why you see me that way. And like, I'm so ready to put myself in other people's roles, I guess, that it's hard for me to truly get pissed off and stay there, because if someone calls me out, I'm like, I'm willing to change. It's almost like I'm loudly putting myself out there to let someone invite a challenge. Like if I'm wrong, challenge me and then let's discuss it. But otherwise I'm going to be like, until someone proves me wrong, I'm going to, anyway.
Yeah. I love that about you. And I think that if more people could be in that constructive space of allowing feedback and not letting the ego get involved so quickly, and like being able to really learn and grow and adjust and adapt based on what feedback is coming toward you, I think we'd have a much better world if more people were doing that,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, like anything, it's trial by fire and error. And I've certainly burned enough bridges and screwed up enough relationships, learning the hard way, and how you communicate your heart to somebody and how you, especially being a manager at a coffee shop, which was a family owned coffee shop for 8 years with my wife as the co-manager, and this is another backstory with my brother and how we met each other. But while my parents were needing help running their business so they could help take care of my brother, I was thrust very quickly into a role of being a manager and having to oversee mostly young women as employees. And I just come from a job where I was in a coffee packaging warehouse. We were cranking like crazy music up and screaming at each other like drunken sailors just for fun because we could. And, like I had to go from that to like delicately managing, this small staff. And it was a jarring experience. I learned the hard way, how you deal with people and how you speak to people, and especially how you speak to young women who are, don't know how to handle my intensity and my like what often is passion misconstrued as anger and antagonistic animosity, but usually it's just passion that I don't understand, so it comes off a little bit chaotically. But thankfully, I developed a lot of really close friendships throughout that job. People who, at the time, were like, "You drive me crazy, David," and then kept like calling and texting, after I left, and like, "We miss you so much," like,
yeah.
There's a certain level of chaotic fun that I brought, and I think people can always see that I'm trying to just be authentic at every turn, even though it's messy and gross sometimes, and I'm learning out loud maybe more than the average bear. Like I'm just trying to be authentic, and just trying to like wear it on my sleeve, but it gets me into a lot of trouble. So
as you grow older, do you feel like you're finding more of a balance with all of that, like with more wisdom gained from different situations?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and it's prepared me for, having daughters for sure. I'm still not anywhere close to where I want to be with, the right kind of dad. I want to, I see, it's like, I always see the version of me that I feel like I can be. And then it's like, there's the reality of who I end up being most of the time. And it's so frustrating because it's like, I get so idyllic and I've learned all these things and I can apply them, but then I often just kind of go, well, ultimately I kind of got to be hands off. They got to learn their own way. I need to just be there for them as like a, backdrop of love and support, but I don't need to be so entangled in their lives like a manager at a coffee shop telling them how, because that's what I do is I tend to hover over them and try and tell them how to do, every little task, and get irritated when they haven't listened for the 100th time to, how to do something and keep doing it their own way wrong. And that's the hardest part, man. It's just like sitting back and letting them discover who they are on their own, not just like knowing when to step in and when to like let go. But a lot of that was, I learned it, managing people at different jobs, not just the coffee shop, but other jobs where I had to hire people or be over people. And yeah, it's like anything else, you usually don't learn until you kind of screw it up and realize the reason you're supposed to do something a certain way, not just because someone told you, but to fundamentally understand why it makes sense to do that, why it's better for the other person. And, but yeah, you can ask my daughters how far I've come with interpersonal skills with the more delicate tendencies. I mean, but yeah, that's a long one. I brace yourself, as you know, with any answer I give, it's going to be meandering. You're probably going to have to rein me in at some point because I'll go into 20 different topics that left unfettered. But
well, I enjoy the elaboration, and I'm sure people listening to will get a better sense of where you're coming from and get to know you better through a lot of the deeper articulation that you tend to do. So I appreciate it.
Well, thanks, man. I mean, I'm way too self-conscious about how everyone else is going to see me, but then there's another part of me that's like, I don't give a shit, and I just got to be myself, and I got to be completely authentic. But no, I mean, there's always going to be that hypersensitive part about how am I coming across? Because I did grow up with so much poor direction in life about how to view other people, and I don't say that to deride my parents and come after them, and the same way that my kids are going to look at things I did and go, what the hell was he thinking? You know, I feel like there's been so many challenges that I'm so aware still of like things I say that are based in that really judgmental upbringing that I toiled with for 37 years of my life, basically. I mean, I was a professed Christian at many times, not proudly at all professed Christian for 37 years. And, you know, it was from like sixth grade onward, just this massive wrestling act, where I just kept seeing through so many things that were, you know, sold to me as empirical truth. And I just said, this doesn't play out in any way that makes sense. Or the way I see it play out in real life refutes those claims over and over. So what am I supposed to do with that? Anyway, it culminated in, the near suicide and near dissolving of my marriage, which has obviously been, as you know, personally, a difficult journey, like anybody who's been married, I guess, for almost 19 years now. But yeah, I think while I try and be authentic, I'm also like constantly hyper aware of like trying not to offend people, trying not to say something that is from that old judgmental place that, you know, because I have that gear, I can easily get into like Bill Burr mode or, you know, Dennis Leary. I don't know if you remember that guy. He would just have bits where it sounds like he just did an enormous amount of coke and drank a bunch of whiskey and just went out there and just started, you know, ranting, raving, freaking out. Everything's, you know, I go and order some whiskey and they tell me, oh, this isn't just any whiskey. This is triple distilled bourbon barrel aged, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, really? Bang, clang. How about another one? How's that for your cute little story? I don't give a, you know, like he just starts ranting and raving about, you know, bring me the cow, bring me the whole freaking cow. I don't even want the steak. I just give me the whole cow. I'll eat it right off.
That's intense.
You know, like, he's always just kind of that like
frenetic energy.
Like, yeah, that like angry Irish, like white, irritated, and like I have that gear, and there's a part of me that kind of enjoys it at times, but I mostly am just like I hate it so much, and I'm like I don't want to be that guy at all. Like I don't like that I can so quickly analyze something and like see usually the most negative aspect of it first before I go towards the positive. I'm like, it's almost like because I'm trying to protect other people from falling into the trap of like believing that this is okay or something. Because I feel like I'm constantly watching, well, myself and everyone else just fall for all these traps where it's like, maybe if I just call out the bullshit directly, people will see through it. But you know, it's all about tact, right? If you're just like angrily shouting things down, people tend to just turn you off, and you definitely lose a large portion of people you could potentially reach by, you know, staying stuck in that hyper intense gear. So like I'm always fighting that inner guy, but like in my heart I want to be like, you know, a freaking ascended guru master who, you know,
because
is in the presence of all energies.
You've had such an interesting journey with being raised Christian and then being Christian and really being part of the church that your parents raised you in, and then questioning all of that, going to atheism, and then coming back to a sense of spirituality, which could include like Christian mysticism and more Gnostic ideas and these different things as well, like coming back full circle around to that in your own way. I'm curious, how would you talk to the version of you, like the younger version of you that was still in this kind of like dogmatic Christianity?
I think I would have just said, keep pulling on that thread, you know, like and don't let the opinion of others dissuade you, because I was so easily like, I've been pulling on that thread since about sixth grade, and just so often, you know, people around me would be like, you're wrong. You know, you're wounding the heart of God by ignoring his will for your life and questioning the irrefutable nature of the Bible and all, you know, all these things that I felt a deep conflict and resonance with. Like there was just a huge dissonance there with me, with so many of the messages I was given and that I kept reading through the Bible. I think I would have just told myself to keep trusting that doubt, but to, pursue it in love and not in anger would probably be the best advice I would have given myself. I mean, some of that anger is necessary. You kind of have to, fight through some of those really judgmental, terrible messages with a little bit of, I hate to use the word like righteous indignation because that's such a leeway for like terrible behavior. But, there is that element where I almost feel like I have to kind of invoke that discernment of a higher source of myself to be like, no, this is clearly not, this is in conflict with everything I feel deep inside of who I am. So I can try and abide by this to make my pastor happy or my parents or my wife or whatever. But if every part of me is in conflict with it, then I'm miserable. And so I was miserable for, sixth grade onward. I was mostly miserable in my faith and doing it almost as an act of guilt to appease the people around me. I think I was checked out in a large way pretty early on when I think intuitively saw through a lot of it. But I just felt like, I was scared of going to hell, and I was scared of disappointing everyone around me. So that's the other part I think I would have told myself, is to let go of the need to, have your parents feel like, let go of the need to be accepted and loved by your parents based on your involvement or understanding of, scripture or your faith or whatever, and to learn to lovingly disengage from that expectation, to like still be respectful and treat them as, your providers or whatever, but like while you're under the roof and all that stuff. But like I really wish I untangled a lot of that codependency much earlier, where it was just kind of like so much was tied into their expectations of how I lived out these beliefs that they couldn't articulate either, and that I would ask questions. And especially Michael, my brother, was the master of, like, he was such a unbelievably valuable part of our family, even though it was so painful for so long, the way he operated within our family, because he was so different. But like without him, I don't know if I'd be here at all, because he was so like he was just wired up to be cut right through the bullshit and to question everything. And it opened up an energetic channel for me to be able to also follow in that path to not just, because I think I was fully prepared to be stuck in a very rigid system of believing for potentially a very long time. I was raised in Statesboro, Georgia, which was
give us a feel for how that differs from the West Coast for people that listening here.
Well, in 1982, when I was born in Statesboro, it was, there was Georgia Southern University was and is still kind of the only draw there, but even that's, not that big of a deal, all told. And so like everyone knew everybody, seems like half the town had the same last name. My church was also my school. So up until the age of 7 years old, I was just insanely insular. And then we moved from Statesboro, Georgia to Everett, Washington, which is just, a little ways north of Seattle. And I was 7, Michael was 9. And like, talk about just like having your chakras or whatever perceptions blown wide open. I mean, I was blasted out of this little cocoon of like, that everything was, I felt like God had everything kind of under control in this small little town environment where it was like, but even then I was trained that, well, there's a reason that the black folks live on that side of town and the white folks live on this side of town. And, there was that kind of reasoning taught to me about where the lines are drawn, but I just thought that was kind of where it ended. And then I saw this crazy melting pot, which was so, again, like, oh my God, talk about like the thing my soul needed so bad was to go from this super closeted, bigoted view of the world, very black and white and binary, to like, oh, there's all kinds of stuff going on out there, like races, cultures, languages, so we moved to these apartment complexes straight from, Christian suburban Statesboro, Georgia to like, crazy busy apartment in Everett. And like, all my friends there, like their parents were like doing drugs and swearing and smoking. And I was just like, I thought we had moved to the pit of hell, because I, was told that was like all the things that Satan had awaiting you. So I was out there trying to like save every kid, and man, it was such a culture shock, but I can't even begin to say how appreciative I am to have had that, and how much I crave the Northwest just for that reason, because it feels like home. It feels like where I finally woke up, you know. Even at that age, it was very, it was one of those things where it's like, you wouldn't want to do it to your kids. Like, you hate to put your kids through like jarring changes and shake up their life, but sometimes that's like the most valuable thing you can have. So
yeah, that's a beautiful way to look at it. How is it, just on a purely geographic level, of the changes of going from Georgia to the Northwest, where now you're like in these deep forests with trees and all of that?
It felt freaking magical, because my cousins had this beautiful house in Everett with this huge sloping backyard. I mean, it was like this 20-degree slope that just went for probably a good, I don't know, half mile, 3/4 of a mile at least, but just deeply, deeply, densely wooded. And I mean, we would just find all the slugs and, you know, critters and, you know, there's ferns everywhere. It was just like this. I mean, it felt like I was in a magical, like, you know, kids book. And we would just go walking along these trails. And then, you know, not long after that, I was snowboarding. And, I mean, yeah, you couldn't get more dramatically different from like just flat brown. You know, Statesboro does not have anything geographically to offer you other than some lakes, you know, and some good places to hunt and fish. But yeah, it's not really scenic in the way that, I don't know. And, you know, we do have a beautiful coastline out here for sure, but it's the one in Savannah is pretty crowded, and it's also like badly polluted. There's a company allowed to basically just dump all of their toxic waste into the Savannah River, and it's part of the reason we're in like top 5 most polluted rivers in the country, the Savannah River.
So sad.
There's some deregulation, and often the beach gets downstream of all that crap, and like they have to close the beach because of, you know, bacterial or other like contamination in the water.
Do you think we're close to the point where people won't put up with that? With that just kind of
nonstop contamination.
Yeah, with that happening to rivers, lakes, streams from corporations, like are we getting close to where people are just not going to put up with it anymore?
I don't know, man. I hope so, but it's scary because they're, you know, they've made it clear that if you oppose environmental development, they will come at you militarily and without mercy.
So there's this like threatening kind of fear-based thing happening.
Yeah. So, but I think I do see, and this kind of ties into some more of the weird spiritual stuff I've been getting into lately, but just, I think we're seeing a culmination of the absurdities of ego energy and its kind of death knells. And so like all this just violent, horrific corruption seems to be so forefront right now. It seems to be so tangible and obvious. And it seems like there's so much more backlash in people's hearts of like, we literally can't continue this way, or we're going to blow each other off the face of the earth, or we're going to poison ourselves into extinction. I mean, I keep looking around going, how have we not collectively woken up more? But I do feel like there's a slow but quickly escalating energetic, you know, kind of reverberation of just awareness of how stupefied we've been by, you know, just how we've been living in such a autopilot mode with so many things that are keeping us, you know, comfortable and numb. And yeah, I think as we see way more disruptions in the way of life we've been used to, you know, and the prices of services and goods and all these kinds of things, the more that stuff starts to shake up dramatically, the more we're forced to address what else is going on that is making our world terrible. And so I think we're moving towards a more expanded awakening towards just how out of control it's become. Because I mean, it does seem like at some point it's an extinction event, or else we all kind of collectively rise up. So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know how much more time we have left. So I hope it's within the next like 2 to 4 years that there's just a really massive global awakening towards moving away from, fuel-based energy. And, I'm hoping that there will be a massive breakthrough in this UFO, UAP, non-human intelligence disclosure that will, there's a lot of rumors right now that they have been withholding 0-point energy or clean energy technologies and teleportation, anti-gravity, just massively civilization changing stuff. And I think, again, if that's truly what's been happening, that's been hidden by our governments and institutions of power, the amount of outrage will be so severe that those systems will crumble because of, I think, a forced, I'm hoping general strikes. I don't know what it's going to take to get people to like unite to send the message to these, power bodies. And maybe I shouldn't talk about this too openly. I'm not trying to plan anything. I'm just, you kind of see it just unfolding and you go, that it really feels like people are globally awakening to the danger of allowing corruption to just sleep and kind of control our lives subconsciously. So yeah, I guess my hope is so many things will change, along with environmental awareness, people saying we're absolutely done with you poisoning our environment. And I hope it also comes with, some assistance from our maybe more intelligent friends to let us know that, yeah, there's a different path. You don't have to use this technology to blow each other up. You can actually use it to, live in unity and have shared energy that you don't have to fight over anymore. And
yeah, that would change so much. Just that alone.
It would change everything. That's what we're fighting over.
Exactly. So it comes down to. I'm curious, is there something that's happening right now that you've been tuned into that you feel is very exciting and promising for humanity? Like a specific thing that we haven't covered yet?
No, I guess it's not like one specific thing. I'm just more, it's been that gradual synchronicity type deal for me, where I've seen so many people around me kind of latching onto these same ideals, people who are maybe much more rigid before and like materialism or, a very religious construct are starting to break through that and go, maybe I've been wrong. Maybe there's more, so I guess I'm just, my hope right now is that I'm seeing a rapid decline in, memberships in religion and things that are kind of more constrictive to our spirituality, and a break away from those old systems. And I think that with that is going to come, again, I think there's going to be a lot more people like me who made the journey from, this faith system that felt at a certain point like the only thing they could ever have in their life to offer meaning, to like the most destructive, terrible thing that is got no value to it, to like, okay, there are chunks of value within it. There are, diamonds within the rough there, but on the whole, it's not a complete, manual or telling or way for me to guide my life that's going to really make sense for me. So I guess that's the kind of slow event I see happening, is this shift away. And I think that's the most significant event we can have, is a shift away from outsourcing our power through religions and other thought systems that say, I'm not enough, I need this, or this. And we start to go inward and go, oh, wait a second. I think I kind of remember who I am, that I'm actually divine, and I put myself here to have whatever experiences I thought I needed to have. And, but ultimately I'm hanging out in heaven right now, projecting myself down into this tiny little fractionated low vibration form, but it's not really representative of truly what I'm a part of, what we're all a part of, in the unified field of source consciousness. Because I think we're all hanging out in eternity right now, but we're also multidimensional, so we can project ourselves into all these different lives. I mean, we might be living multiple lives right now in different timelines. I mean, I think there's so much happening that is so far beyond the veiled understandings of the man-ape's perception of reality that I'm so excited about going back home and finally like remembering everything that I already knew.
Yeah, I wanted to ask,
but also have this new perception.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I wanted
sorry,
to
go
ask
ahead.
you specifically about some of the most notable near-death experience accounts you've heard, because I know that's something that you enjoy tuning into.
Yeah, that was like the big game changer for me. Was I was just kind of starting to get a little bit more like, all right, God, you know, if you're out there, source, whatever you are, I'm all ears. You're not going to reach me through the Bible or through religion, just so you know. But I'm open to any other way you want to directly give me maybe some infusion of truth about what reality is and what we're about. And yeah, it wasn't that long after that. I just happened to randomly on YouTube come across a near-death experience by this old Ukrainian American man named Andy Petro. And I just remember like it broke me, man. Like it was so beautiful. Like he was like 12 or 13 and he drowned in a lake. And he he got to see his life review, and he said many different lives that he on many different planets. And I remember just like my head exploding, just like, wait, what? The last thing I had banked on was reincarnation. With all the different ways I had been approaching my worldview at the time, I was like, basically we're material, randomly lucky material meat bags that have organized onto this planet, but we're not here for more than just the short little span we're here for, and that's it, and that's good enough for me, and that's a miracle enough. I was kind of just trying to land there, but man, like that near-death experience from Andy was like, and it took probably 5 or 6 months to get Lisa to watch it, and she watched the same one, and she, like me, just bawled, like just cried, like that crying of like where it's just like you remembered something that is so familiar and comforting, and just but yeah, there's been so many that we've watched and that I've seen and read about since then that are just so affirming to the idea that there is no getting it right in terms of some dogma or corner of understanding. It's just about remembering who we are ultimately. There's a lot. I'm sure there's a lot more to it that I'm not going to understand as far as why we choose all these complicated soul paths and contracts with each other and multiple lives and entanglements. But ultimately, it's to get us. From my understanding, it's because we chose to be here. We chose to give ourselves the illusion of ignorance and cast ourselves into a physical experience. But in order for that to be immersive and necessary to work, much like a virtual reality video game or something, it has to be very convincing. You have to be convinced that you're not in the real world anymore. So we had to be convinced we're not at home with Source, where, we had to create the trick of ignorance to give us this illusion that we're separate. So
Right.
That's kind of how I'm framing it.
Yeah,
these days.
and that makes
Anyway,
sense. That makes sense to me, because I always think of Earth School as a good name for it, and like creating Earth School conditions with the forgetting, with the duality, with this illusion of separation, illusion of all this being real. And so it sets up that Earth School condition, those Earth School conditions, so that we can have this curriculum, which is what leads to the soul growth, is these different experiences and different learnings that we play out with different people that are playing different roles in our life. And there's the concept, of course, that I'm sure you're familiar with, is that we kind of choose who we're going to work with in a lifetime before we come onto the planet.
Yeah. And that's one that's been really a challenge for me, is like trying to figure out where do you release those contracts. And that's some of the stuff that, like, you turned me on to Michael Mirdad, and that's kind of one of the things he's talked about is, being a point where you finally release yourself from the karmic burdens and cycles of the third density lives, or, physical lives. And so, yeah, I've kind of had a lot of like intense meditations where I'm just like, I love you all, but I'm severing all contracts, like both to me and from me, like anything that I was obligated to, I pray will be forgiven, and anything that was obligated to me, I forgive it, and maybe that's not the right languaging or how it works, but like, I'm just trying to think of it in terms of releasing finally that, because I feel deeply like I'm just exhausted. Like I've done so many of these lives, or my soul has gone through so much that I just feel deeply like I'm ready for an existence where it's just based on heart and love and the emotion of just inclusivity, and not having all this ego and warring stuff. Because it's just, I've never identified with that really overtly masculine, quote unquote, alpha, I know it's a bad misuse and all that, but that's never resonated with me. I was always bad at sports because I was lacking in confidence, I very much embrace a more feminine energy that, is more predominant in me. And I used to be really ashamed of that. Now it's like, no, I think there's a lot of value in that. I think that's I'm hoping that, this is kind of in keeping with some more like astrological stuff I've been ingesting that I don't even begin to understand the surface of, but that there's sort of a breakdown of the old, again, like I was saying, the old ego energies are dying. And now there's this birthing of like divine masculine energy that's entering the earth, of like that discernment, but met with like that balance of having love, coexisting with discernment, so that it's not just masculinity isn't seen through strength and brute force, but through like loving discernment and being able to provide for, your community or your people.
Yeah.
And to have like this true strength being in tenderness and vulnerability. And I think that's what I see slowly trickling in. And I feel like I'm a part of that in some way, but that could just be me like conflating things and like letting my ego actually take the reins and, oh yes, you're part of the new rise of masculinity. And, like, I don't know, man.
It's always good to keep an eye on that, like keep an eye on what the ego could be doing. But I think you're probably on the right track with that. I think the more that people can balance the feminine and masculine within themselves and not have it be this binary thing or this extreme thing of one or the other, the better it will be.
That's kind of what, and the Yeshua channelings through Pamela Kriba have been a really big part of some of these understandings for me. And again, she even says, in the book, that the channelings, anybody who has a channeling, it's subjective through that person's eyes, that they're still filtering that entity or whatever through their perspective. So, but just what comes through in the channeling she had with Yeshua, I have the book, there's it's on YouTube, the playlist of the entire audiobook. That's just really, that's what's given me so much of a new perspective. And crap, now I'm trying to remember what I was tying that into.
Actually, I wanted to go more into the Yeshua channelings. How would you explain what those are to people that don't know?
Well, so for example, Pamela Kriba, who had the series of channelings, she described herself as basically fairly misanthropic at the time when she discovered she had the ability through trance meditation to channel an entity that was identifying itself as Yeshua. But at the time, she had never done anything like that. She'd known she'd had a sensitivity her whole life to some sort of psychic abilities. She had kind of felt things in a deep way, but she was a very mostly depressed and isolated person. And her partner Garrett, who they still run the website and offer the channelings and everything still. Through like basically his support, she kind of discovered she was channeling Yeshua, and so they began to document it, and then she also began to publicly channel him. And again, Yeshua goes on to say him is not really necessary. You can call it her for all intents and purposes. Yeah. It's all the same thing. But that Yeshua was being channeled in public, and people were asking questions. They'd come to these sessions and ask Yeshua questions directly. And so that's the second half of the channelings, is the public stuff. The first half is her private channelings with Yeshua. And just it kind of explains, and she explains that channelings are, again, subjective. Don't take this as gospel truth. This is what came through for me. But in those channelings, Yeshua goes on to say, I am the Jesus you knew from the Bible, but also please disassociate me from that Jesus, like almost entirely. Like, yes, I was there during that time. I walked on the earth. Some of the words you've heard, ascribed to me are basically, and he doesn't really say that exactly, but he basically goes on to say exactly what he came here for, which was to put up a mirror to us to show us our own divinity. Like that's as simple as it is. That we were kind of spinning our wheels, lost in the illusion of ego and just destroying ourselves and kind of, stuck in these cycles, and that someone had to basically come, and he was one of many. He even came as many different people, but he's one of many different gurus and mystics who came to remind us that we're not human, that we're not limited to this veiled experience, that we're beyond that, and that once we remember that, we'll stop behaving so barbarically. And once we see the unity we all have with each other, things will dramatically change. But like Yeshua says, when they came to bring that awareness, the way that energy dances just in the universe, in this physical universe we've created, is anytime there's like light energy that rises, dark energy will come and meet it, and they'll basically have to dance. And it's our place to find that middle ground of kind of being in the presence of dark and light energy and not judging or needing to, gravitate towards one or the other, kind of that ultimate neutrality and stoicism. And, again, all these concepts that have been kind of lived out, played out in different philosophies and cultures throughout the world. There's been a lot of understanding this is kind of how it works, that we find that the answers when we go within and we ask the questions of ourselves. Am I divine? Am I God? Am I in control? Do I have the power here? So yeah, there's other channelings with Yeshua from other people. They're very, very similar in theme. The same concept of, yes, I was the biblical Jesus, but I'm not like here to judge or to tell you that you need forgiveness of sins. Like the only thing you need to forgive is yourself. And once you do that, everything falls into place. Once you love and forgive yourself, you can love and forgive everyone around you, which is very much where I'm still stuck squarely in the middle of, is loving and forgiving myself. And I still, man, like, get me on the road with the drivers around here, man. And like all that good, like Christ consciousness from Yeshua, that love energy, it wears off real quick. And I go right back to like, protective survival mode. Like, these people are trying to kill my family, and what's wrong with you?
That's where the work is. It's like
old shadow
it's
work.
Like the Ram Dass quote: "If you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family." Have you heard that one? Yeah, it's
great.
So good.
No, I love anything Ram Dass I've heard, but there's so like, dude, I'm so far behind on like this is the stuff I regret. I wish I'd been reading these type of people my whole life instead of like trying to force Christianity to make sense and like being terrified of outside, perspectives for, again, most of the 37 years I struggle with it. And so I have a lot of catching up to do, and I still get complacent and like, well, who's got time to read all these books?
I think part of that's
or family life.
Part of that's the trust in knowing that the right books and the right materials will come into your life at the right time, and you're not behind, and there's not regret. There doesn't need to be regrets about it, because everything is coming at the right time for your journey, for your path. So
yeah,
that helps me at least.
I know, man. And it's so hard to wrap your head around that, right? Like that there's really this synergy of like energy happening, or all this orchestration of things conspiring to help you elevate your journey. All these little things that feel like, how could that possibly be connected? Like that thing happened in a vacuum. That person made that decision on a whim. How could that possibly be intertwined with this journey for me? But like, that's the stuff that we're all going to be so blown away with when we go back home and like, oh shit, like it's this massive
That's
dance,
why I love that concept of the life review, and like, seeing different potentials play out differently, like how things could have gone differently in your life and learning from that. compared to what you chose to do. I find that really interesting.
I'm so upset already I'm already like, higher self. Can I skip past like some of my life review where I already know how, well, I don't. I can guess how I made people feel in so many moments where I was just acting out of my pain and my confusion and my disillusionment with my faith that I regret. But like, again, who am I to say that my inflicting that pain on them maybe didn't in some way inadvertently be part of a positive change for them? And of course, while you don't ever want to like use that as your MO to go forward and, well, I can just do as I please, because obviously it could be used for the good. You never know. Like, you have to be conscientious, but at the same time, I just try to look at stuff as there's no like wasted thoughts, actions, energy. Like everything has a purpose. It's all being weaved together in some crazy cosmic, incredible way that we just don't have access to, most of us, very clearly in this form. So, but I'm okay. I'm okay waiting for the answers. I'm not like in a big rush anymore. Like I got to get it all figured out here. And like, I do have those desperate moments of like, I would like a more direct interfacing. Like I would like source, like a dream that's like irrefutable or something where it's like, oh, it's my higher self telling me to like do this or that.
Yeah. Where it's just like so clear. I think people do have those experiences through different routes that could be shamanic journeying, psychedelics, cannabis. There's just different, it could be through singing. Group singing is so powerful. Have you had any experience with that? Like song circles?
Only in Christian environments, but even then that was the most compelling and moving part of any Christian experience for me, was like song circles where it was like people were actually genuinely plugged in together, which was rare. It only happened a handful of times, but yeah, there's something very powerful about a unified energy for just song and expressing yourself that way. But can finish your thought.
I'm just thinking of, different ways that we can get into having these transcendent experiences with other people in community. And I think that's why there's such a popularity right now around ayahuasca circles, is because people crave that community connection and then the transcendent experience that the actual plant medicine is bringing. And then when you have a community connection like that, you have the integration part kind of built into it. You're all talking about the experience afterward. And so like I've experienced going to something called Singing Alive here in Oregon, where it was that kind of, you're camping out for a whole weekend, and it's so simple because there's no stages, no performers. It's just all people singing in groups together with facilitators that are leading these group songs that are designed to bring people up into these higher states of awareness, of love, of heart opening. And it's all just feels so powerful of what we can do together with a group of people that are kind of on the same page, on the same wavelength, all harmonizing together. And it doesn't matter if your voice is great or not. It's people all just kind of by ear, or, I mean, someone could be off too, and that's included as well. But everyone just harmonizing. It's just so unifying.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know I crave, and that's one thing that, when I became like a proud atheist, and I don't shy away from that label. I still kind of embrace it ostensibly because I'm not a theist in a way that I believe in like this definitive God. I believe in creator source, but I don't believe in like a label to, I don't know. I guess maybe atheism isn't the right label at that point, but I don't shy away from kind of putting myself there, because I think there's still so much, there's also so much stigma with it. I mean, you can't even run for office, and I'm sure I'll get this wrong, but I think it's at least 7 or 8 different states where you can't even run for office if you're an atheist. So, there's a part of me that feels like there's still a big fight there for, again, that just the voice of freedom, not necessarily because I still want to champion that, which it's not really even a cause. I mean, it's an amorphous thing. It's just saying, I don't believe there's a specific creator God. That's all atheism is. Anything beyond that is up to the user, up to the individual. It's not a religion. It's not a cult. Of course, I was always trained that way. but it's whatever you make it beyond the point of, I don't believe there's sufficient evidence for a creator God. And that's kind of what it really is about, is saying I think most atheists are open to that revelation. And so maybe that's why I shouldn't call myself that anymore, because I believe that revelation was finally given to me in a slow burn type of way. And again, through like the near death experiences and we didn't get into that, but that's something we can talk about later. But when I was at the bottom of the barrel personally, I found the Wim Hof method, breathing and cold endurance stuff. And then a natural doctor. And there was some ways that I found, again, I connected with that inner power and realized that, okay, this isn't something that comes through, God or something outside of me that I have to beg for. It's something that I can tap into within myself. But anyway, I know we got way off from songs and how that brings together.
I think it's all connected. I think it's all connected. And I actually wanted to ask you specifically about the Wim Hof breathing and techniques and what that did for you during that part of your life when you were consistently using those methods, and really how that was propelling you.
Well, I really think it saved my life, because I was just stuck in a loop of suicidal ideation, mostly just trying to stage some innocent enough looking car accident kind of deal where, whoops, I went over a bridge on accident, but that's hard to fake that. But I was just constantly thinking about, how do I get out of this misery I'm in? Because my marriage was falling apart, and my physical health was absolutely bottomed out. I was 60 pounds heavier than I am now, and I just was sick constantly. Nothing was ever just I never felt good physically for any stretch. I still have a pretty rough overall deal there, but this was a totally night and day different thing. But yeah, digestively, I couldn't eat anything, without it just messing me up. So I was desperate, and that was right when COVID was coming around the corner, and everyone at work, I was working at Whole Foods, and I was working in produce. So I was right by the main front doors of this particular Whole Foods. And I knew I was about to get exposed to just a wave of virus germs. Little did we know we had already gotten COVID, or at least several people at work did. We didn't know what it was at the time, but I got really freaked out, and I was like, I'm going to die. This thing is going to kill me. And I don't want to die from COVID. I'd rather die by my own hand. So crap, what do I do? And I got desperate. I was just universe, if you got a solution here, I'm pretty much convinced that COVID's going to kill me if I don't get my body right, even though that was obviously an extreme. I had no way of knowing that. I probably would have been really sick, but who knows? Either way, it just kind of forced me into this mentality of all right, there's got to be something out there for me. I've given up with regular doctors. They just keep throwing pharmaceuticals at me that don't do anything, add new problems. And so Lisa and I were in the middle of working on our divorce basically, but we were still communicating, and she sent me a link to a YouTube or a Netflix episode of Goop, the Gwyneth Paltrow show. And I was like, at this point I had not a very high opinion of her brand based on some of the products they sold, but I watched this episode and I was blown away with this concept of cold endurance and breathing to gain control over anxiety and all these things, and to have physical breakthroughs. And I just thought, well, I got nothing else to lose. I'll try this. And yeah, with it, I also started seeing a natural doctor right around the same time, but the breathing was clearly the biggest difference. So you do 3 to 5 rounds of 20 to 30 breaths, rapid breaths, in through your belly, out through your mouth. It really stresses belly breathing. So it really teaches you to learn if you're chest breathing or not, which is, pretty obvious when you breathe in, if your chest moves up or if your belly moves out. So I kind of learned the technique of belly breathing, and then you do, basically 30, I would do 30 intense belly breaths, and then you hold it, you exhale and you hold it for as long as this feels comfortable. Some people can do it up to 3 to 5 minutes. I would usually do 1.5 to 2 minutes. And yeah, you do so many of those rounds a day. And then I would usually do that right before a cold shower. And the combination of those things, just like within a week, it completely snapped the suicidal ideation. And I suddenly just had this like love for myself, for my family, for Lisa. I really had this renewed desire to regain my life and, to make things work, hopefully with Lisa. And thankfully we did. And as you know, that's obviously always with any relationship, always a struggle. Her and I are very different people, but we've really gone through some real shit together and come out the other side. And I think that's just honestly made the love that much more like binding. Right now it feels like we've really hit this new level of just kind of, okay, we've really been through a lot together, and now we're still like with each other, and we still see a future together. And like, but yeah, it was real bleak. And I can't say Wim Hof method alone, is responsible, because that's overselling it to other people too, who might, think that's going to be their answer. But for me in that time, it was exactly what I needed. And I wish I was still as religious with it, but it's like one of those things where I always have it in my, my tool bag when things are getting a little tough. But yeah, I'm terrible about like consistently doing like exercise, breathing, any of that stuff. Like, it's so hard for me to, like, I'll do it for like a year, everything will change, and I'm like, I guess I'm good. And then kind of just coast and then get back to like, oh shit, I gotta do this again.
I think that's so normal, and so many people have that happen for them. And it's a really good reminder, because I've been wanting to do the breath work. So I think I'm gonna probably do some later today, at least a little simple one, just to get back on that train.
Nice.
I feel like we constantly need reminders from each other about these different practices that are so helpful, and it can just be so easy to get off the train, forget. You think, like you said, you think you're good.
Yeah. Or as Wim likes to he hasn't like on a t-shirt or whatever, just breathe, motherfucker. Like he's always.
He is such a character and so entertaining and so engaging. Yeah, he's great. Yeah.
I mean, there's a few red flags here and there, but like anybody like that, but like truly what they're doing is, I think, pretty revolutionary stuff for a lot of people, even though it's not like they're drawing from mostly ancient, yogic breathing techniques and very old techniques, but just kind of streamlining it a little bit, and putting his own twist on it. So while it's nothing new, it's a more accessible version for people who are scared of like, ooh, I don't know about these mystics or this, Buddhist stuff or, whatever people get wigged out about. But yeah, it has the potential to be culty, but I think they've kind of, it seems like they've stayed away from that for the most part. But I don't really subscribe too much to the, like, everything they do now. Just was so thankful. And like, I ended up like talking to his daughter on Instagram. Like I followed, a few of them on Instagram, and like, one of his like 4 kids or whatever, 4 or 5 daughters. She was really friendly enough to at least engage with me. I was, it was kind of one of those things where I'm like, I probably shouldn't have done that, but like their app, you could do the breathing stuff for free. And then they started adding a like subscription thing. You had to pay for it. And even though I'd already like bought all the videos online, somehow I was locked out and I had to pay for another, thing. And I was just like, I love you guys. I love what you're doing. Maybe just pass along to like whoever's making the business decisions that it really sucks when you've already like paid for the thing. And now you got the breathing's behind a paywall. And she was like, oh, I had no idea, and she was really like thoughtful and nice to even like entertain some random cretin who's coming after it, but like I tried to pad it out with a lot of love. And the family seems like a really cool, like, she's always traveling around teaching people, doing ice baths and cold endurance and, courses on meditation and breathing. And like, I want to see that be like the normative thing in the world. Like those kind of people would just be like, oh yeah, that's just common, that's just how we do things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
we do.
And not be so like an aberration.
Yeah. Well, David, I feel like we could talk on and on, but would you want to do a second part to this? Do a part 2?
Dude,
let's do it.
Yeah, of course. Like anytime you want to make it happen, I'm game. That's great. It's fun.
Thanks so much for joining me, man. This has been a real blast.
Yeah. Yeah, man. My pleasure. for sure.
All right, I'll talk to you on the next.
But,
I'll talk to you before that, but see you on the next one.
all right, man. Sounds good.
All right,
Take her
you
easy.
too. Take care.
Bye.